Welcome to Just the Facts. I have in my studio this morning, I'm sure a friendly face to many of you, certainly familiar face, Karl Spring. Karl is running for council at large.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh no, District 1.
I'm sorry, District 1, beg your pardon. And so welcome, Karl. It's
Thanks,
good to
Marcia.
have you with us this morning.
Appreciate it. Yep.
Karl, would you please tell our viewing audience a little bit about yourself and why is it that you're running for First District in the council?
You bet. Well, my wife Lynn and I live in Lakeside. We've owned a house there for going on 5-6 years now. And about a 100-year-old house, and they built them sturdy back then, of course. I guess it was an old farmhouse a long time ago. And I have 4 kids and 3 stepkids, and they're all grown out of the house. My oldest is 24, and our youngest is about to be 18. So we've got quite a spread of boys and girls there. We're expecting our first grandchild here in about 4 weeks.
Oh.
And I'm from Hopkins, Minnesota originally. My wife is from here. She's a lifelong Duluth resident. And but we moved back here about 10 years ago. And I actually wanted to get into local politics 25 years ago. But at the time, my kids were 1, 3, 5, and 7. They were tiny, and I didn't want to miss that opportunity to be home with them when they were little. So I waited, and my youngest son, Gunnar, he was the goaltender for Duluth East the last 2 years, and he graduated here in June. And so I wanted to wait until his high school hockey program was over, and now he's down in the city. He's playing in a junior hockey level down there. But so now I've got some time with the kids out of the house, and it's just something I wanted to do. I've always taught my kids to, wherever you live, give back to your community. You know, be productive, work hard, pay your bills, and then give back when you can. And so my goal here is to become a city councilor for District 1, which is Lakeside, Lester Park, Woodland, a little bit of Kenwood, goes up the North Shore 5 miles, and represent everybody out there and be a voice for them. I work full-time at Kohler Chevrolet in auto sales. I've been there about 6 years now. But I do have some time that I can offer to this. And I just want to help be a voice for the constituents in District 1. And for the most part, I would be considered the more conservative candidate in that my main thing, I hate to waste money. I hate it. I mean, I literally work 6 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day. And we're all working hard. I mean, we all are. But my main thing is I want to be a fiscal conservative, and we have plenty of needs in this town, and I want to separate wants from needs and do what is best for the vast majority of Duluthians here right now, starting in January, hopefully.
Well, Karl, what is it that you used to do that people should be familiar with who you are?
Well, for 27 years I did TV weather. I've got my AMS seal, which is American Meteorological Society, and I did TV weather for 27 years. I first worked up here in Channel 3 back in 1986 and 87. Then I moved on to work in stations in Iowa, Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and the Twin Cities for 5 years too, before moving back up here 10 years ago. Here I worked, Channel 3 and Channel 6 were kind of put together about 8 years ago. Actually almost 10 years ago now. So I worked at those combined stations for about 3 years. Then I worked at the Fox affiliate for a year also. And then while I was working here at Kohler, I also continued to do weather part-time down at Fox 9 in Minneapolis into 2012. And they actually said, you know what, we'd like to hire you full-time down here again. Because at the time I was living here and working at Kohler and watching my kids play hockey and working down there doing some weather in Minneapolis too. I said, you know what, I can't live my life 175 miles apart. So I said, I appreciate it, it's been fun, but I'm just going to, thanks but no thanks. So we decided we wanted to stay here, obviously. But yeah, TV weather, meteorologist, that's what I did for 27 years.
Well, I'm real glad to see that you came back to Duluth. Duluth's a beautiful place. I've lived here most of my life, born and raised here.
Yeah.
But, okay, you talked about being fiscally conservative and separating the needs from the wants. Mm-hmm. What are the needs? I know what people want. I hear it all the time.
Sure.
And I think along the same lines you do. So let's talk about the needs and maybe some of the ways you hope to change those, the focus of what has been happening to Duluth.
You know, for the last 3 months now, all of the candidates here in town, whether mayoral candidates or anybody running for the districts or at large, we've all got the same things. We all want better roads, less crime, lower taxes, lower fees. Pretty general stuff. I mean, it's just like curing cancer. We all want to do it. But what I look at, I look at things that affect the largest proportion of people who live in Duluth. We've got 86,000 people here. Now, just like with the weather affects almost everybody, you know, unless you're shut in or you're incapacitated in some type. But for the most part, the weather affects everybody, and roads do too. Roads and infrastructure. I took a Leadership Duluth program for a year back in 07, 08. We spent a month learning about the infrastructure in Duluth. A lot of the sewer and water pipes, especially downtown, were built in the 19th century, not the 20th, but the 19th, going back to 1890s. And it's cracking and falling apart. And of course here, my weatherman hat on, because of our freeze-thaw process here in Duluth being so severe, it's cracking and falling apart. The infrastructure is. If we lived in a more moderate area like a Kansas City or Omaha, it wouldn't be such a big deal. But up here, the weather is brutal on our infrastructure and streets. So the whole street thing, particularly since we lost the funding from the casino, and that's not coming back, at least not in the form that it was for about 27 years, we need to look at financing that, because if we don't have sewer and water, if we don't have take care of our wastewater treatment, because we don't want the sewage going in Lake Superior, which we seem to have kind of taken care of that in the last few years, we need that. We need to have the roads, of course, up to snuff. Not only for people that live here, but Twin Cityans come up here to escape the madness of the Twin Cities.
Yes.
I grew up here in the 60s and 70s. Now in Minnesota there are 5 million people. Half of them live in the 11-county metro area. And in the madness, it's crazy down there. The traffic, you can't tell if it's noon or midnight. The traffic's bad all the time.
Yes.
But people love to get up here to Duluth, to God's country, to escape. And even when they come up here, even the tourists are complaining. They have a wonderful weekend in Duluth, and they go home, and all they can say is, the lake was great and the roads are lousy. So we need to fix the roads not only for us who live here, but for the tourists, because tourism is a big deal. It brings in a lot of money, but we can't depend on just tourism, though. We need to make this city right financially for the people who live here all the time, too. So as far as wants and needs, roads and infrastructure are pretty much number one to me.
Okay, we'll step back a minute for your statement on tourism. Yes, it seems to me they've focused on tourism, and we have lots of places for people to go. We have lots of places for them to stay, but our infrastructure is failing. And like you say, for the residents of the community, I have 2 children who live in Duluth. I live in the country. I live in Duluth. Mm-hmm. And their young families struggling to pay the increasing taxes, which are spent on these wants. They're not spent on the needs. So, okay, if you are elected to the 1st District Council seat, what are some ways that you're going to fix the infrastructure, which is really what municipalities are supposed to do, the fire, infrastructure,
police.
And police are the main goals. The government is doing things they shouldn't be doing. How are we going to change that so that the infrastructure can be fixed?
The squeaky wheel gets the grease, just like in your house or in my house. You want to make sure the water's running correctly, your toilets and sinks are working, nothing's leaking, electricity goes on when you turn on the lights. If suddenly, whoa, water, where's the water coming from? You got to get the pipes fixed. Like in our house, just like in the city, got to get the pipes fixed. You have to have the electrical grid working too. So take care of those things for your city. Those are just the most base things that you have to have working in your house and in your city. The city is also responsible, of course, again, for fire protection and for police, for keeping us safe. Those are the most basic needs that we need. Beyond that, the things that I see that we are kind of wasting money on, I feel that we're wasting money on, I like everything in Duluth, but there are certain things, again, needs, infrastructure, roads, water, working correctly. Wants, $35 million for new library, okay? I grew up in libraries, we all did. But what libraries should be now and what they were 40, 50 years ago are not the same. For one thing, and I've got a prop here, we all have one of these things, okay? I can pretty much get every book ever written on my phone. We all can. That's why encyclopedia salespeople aren't around anymore, because we have these things, okay? So yes, we need to get the library up to snuff as far as connections for Wi-Fi. Also, it needs a new heating and air conditioning system. Probably needs new, more energy efficient windows and caulk and insulation. But I heard from an engineer who talked about, look, the heating and air conditioning system in the library is from the mid-'70s. It's archaic, okay? The building needs more insulation. It was done with R values done 40 years ago. So of course it's not up to snuff. But we can go in there, put in a new HVAC system, new windows, new insulation for $2 to $3 million, not $35 million. The Metrodome in Minneapolis only cost $55 million. Now that's 35 years ago, but I do not think we need, or we have, 35 mil for a new library. I think that's irresponsible. And that, what seems funny too, is that issue has kind of gone away a little bit because people know how ridiculous it sounds. Also, I like skiing, I like outdoor activities, but we've given Spirit Mountain about 1.3, 1.4 million over the last 3 years. I know at my business, if we were losing $300,000 a year or something akin to that, they'd shut us down. We'd be out of business. If you can't make money, you're not going to survive, and nor should you. Maybe we need private people to come in and run that differently. Maybe they shouldn't have built the second chalet at the bottom of the hill. Whatever they're doing, it's not working. Also with the aquarium. I know that was built 10, 15 years ago, and most families I talk to, they've gone about twice, and then the kids are bored, don't want to go back. It's 11, 12 bucks to go in, it costs too much. And that too, it's a nice thing, but they've had many management groups, including Ripley's, come in and try to run the place economically. It's not doing it. So, but, however, my wife and I work part-time at Answell Arena. We're part-time ushers there at Bulldog hockey games. That thing's been a great asset to the community. We have hundreds of events there a year, and it's making money. That and the deck complex. That's a shining star. But so if you have business models out there that are working, more power to them. You know, that's what we need to have here. But if you have businesses that are giant sucking sound and just taking money away from the city, you know what? It might be time to turn the page and do something else.
Well, and I certainly agree with you. I'll go back to when my son, who's 47, worked at Spirit Mountain, and he quit school. He didn't have a degree, but he had a head. And he said, Mom, back then they should have had their own water source, not the city water. How many millions has this city sunk in? You don't have to answer this. That's a question for the public. How many millions does the city have to sink into it before they get it? They're not making money. But then, you know what? Municipalities are not supposed to be running businesses in the first place. That is supposed to be private. Is there any way to privatize I call it the tin can. The looks of the aquarium just trouble me. So that's my nickname for it. Is there any way to privatize that? Is there any way to privatize the ski hill? Is there any way to privatize the golf courses? They too or should not be in a municipality. They got rid of the Nemadji one in Superior. The thing is making money and it's doing fine, and the city is not having to put out money for it. Is there a way to privatize some of these suckers, like you say?
With Spirit Mountain, putting on my meteorologist hat again, of course it makes sense to take water from Lake Superior to throw up on the hill to make snow, because with the water cycle, look, you take the water out of the lake, okay, you throw it up on the hill. In the spring, it melts and goes right back on down into the lake, okay? Through a process of evaporation, evapotranspiration, and percolation up from the ground, it goes right back to the lake. It's not a problem. You're just moving water, putting it here, it freezes, and rolls back down into the lake. So that's very environmentally conscious. So that should obviously be, you shouldn't have to pay for water for Spirit Mountain. You've got the world's largest inland freshwater lake right there. Make some snow. It's going to go back down in the summertime anyway. And I know for the aquarium, they actually had the folks who run Ripley's, believe it or not, try to run it for a while. I don't know if they still are or not, but it's just not a money-making endeavor. You know, if I had a business up here where I sold snow to local people, I wouldn't make any money. They can get their own. So if you have a business that's just not making money, what if I sold tacos flavored with gasoline? They wouldn't sell very well, okay? I'd be out of business. If a business isn't making it, you just can't keep supporting it. Shut it down or change something. It's lunacy. It's actually, as wasn't it Einstein who said, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is insanity. So that's fiscally just dumb.
And I've gone to the aquarium. I think we've been there twice. And the first time I went, I'm not going back again. But we decided to take my mother-in-law. And the fishy smell there, no, this was several years ago, was so bad I went, well, I'm not going back again. I've been to aquariums in other cities. The Chicago one is the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen in my life. And people are there all the time. They have wedding receptions. We went to a wedding reception there. So yes, I agree. If it's sucking money, then let's get rid of it.
Well, and one quick thing on that, we went to a wedding at the aquarium here in Duluth as well a few years ago. And in fact, on the cake, instead of a bride and groom, they had like two plastic fish in a bride and groom little plastic outfit. And after my wife said, what do you think of the wedding? I said, all I thought was how fishy it smells in here. It was the fishiest wedding I've ever been to in my life. I mean, I'm eating cake, and I'm just thinking, ugh, it smells like fish. It's fish cake. And so anyway.
Well, yeah, it is a boring place because, I mean, they had native fish in there, and I'm going, well, I used to catch these when I was a kid. Yeah, it's nice to see them, but that wasn't exciting. And we'd think they'd have some exotic fish there that nobody from this area is ever going to see or around the Twin Cities.
Well, maybe at the end of the tour there, maybe you get to fry up your fish and eat it. Maybe that would make it more interactive. I want that one.
Well, maybe when you get on the city council,
I'll see what I can do about that.
You could suggest that.
Yeah.
But you have to have a little humor even in politics, right, Karl?
Oh, you better.
Okay, so now some of the other areas that you would like to discuss that you have looked into, and perhaps you see some things that need to be changed.
I have a bike and a motorcycle. I ride my motorcycle downtown, not a problem. Park it downtown. My bicycle, I do not ride it downtown. I know a lot of business owners down there, including from Mainstream Fashion, and some restaurant owners down there too. The idea of taking away parking spaces to put bicycle traffic through downtown, right down Superior, is a terrible idea. We're not Europe, we're not Denmark, we're not Germany. For one thing, or like Minneapolis, where they have more bike traffic down there downtown. Minneapolis is basically flat. Duluth is flat, and then it goes up 800 feet. If you take away parking spots from downtown Duluth, you will kill retail. The mall area almost killed retail here 30 years ago. We're just barely getting people back down here to shop again. And as been mentioned at city council meetings, you don't see bicyclists going downtown, going shopping, and riding back with armfuls of stuff they bought downtown. Okay? You want to take Michigan Street, you want to take First Street, fine, give them a path up there. This whole Superior Street thing, forget about it. The people that are efforting that are not business people or business owners. They just don't get it. But what they want it all, and they want it now. And they don't have to pay for it either. They have no skin in the game. We all pay tax, title, license on our vehicles. Cars, motorcycles, trucks. The bikers do not. So that's just, I don't even want to hear about it. You're not going down Superior Street. That's a silly thing to me.
They're also dangerous because they now plug in their, I experienced this the other day, they plug into their little, whatever they're listening to, and they don't care what's behind them, and they don't wear reflective clothing. I mean, there should be some restrictions and some regulations on bikers so that they're more visible, and they need to take some road testing to see if they're capable of being on the road with a bike, because they don't think about a car or a motorcycle having more power, and all of a sudden they're there and we're supposed to stop.
We put a ton of money and time into the lake walk, and it stretches all the way from Brighton Beach all the way to the bridge. And you know what? There are bikers on there, there are walkers on there. We put a lot of money and effort into that. Use it, okay? I am not going to live here and put up with bikers telling me how to run my town. That just isn't going to work.
Well, and they're expecting us to pay for their bike paths too, with no, like you say, they have no skin in the game. And so can cities regulate bikers and make them have passes or licenses or anything so that maybe you could get some revenue off of that?
Well, every city's different. And in Minneapolis and St. Paul, again, they've got 1,000 times more people than we have here. We're doing what we can with what we've got. But you can't always get what you want, but sometimes you can get what you need. That's from the Rolling Stones, by the way.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Good quote. Okay, so we've talked about bike paths, we've talked about needs and wants. What are some of the other needs, and where would you get the money for them?
Well, one thing, Chuck Horton always talks about the crime up here, and, getting a last place on earth out of town was fabulous. That was one of the biggest victories I've seen here ever. And just on a personal note, I think he should stay in jail forever because he was killing our children. That just irritates me to no end. I know emergency room doctors at St. Luke's and Essentia who talked about people getting high on bath salts or meth or these fake drugs, literally taking their eyes out with forks. They're seeing injuries that are so heinous that it sounds like a horror movie or something. Now, unfortunately, the need and demand is still there. I know people, police officers too, on the range and here in town, and they say the need and the want for these awful drugs is still out there among certain people, and if they don't get it downtown, they'll get it on the range or somewhere else. That is a societal problem that I don't get it. I mean, look, I'm a nerd's nerd. I don't drink, don't smoke, don't do drugs, okay? I eat too much cheese and pop. But besides that, I'm kind of a nerd. I don't understand why you want to go through life higher than a kite, because you don't accomplish anything. You're no good to society. You don't make a good parent or spouse or kid or anything. I just don't get that. I wish that's the root of the problem. But also a problem, too, is that we talk about the housing up here, the so-called housing crisis. I know my first house cost $57,000, $57K. It wasn't that great a house for $57,000, but we saved up our money and moved on and got a nicer one, and then another one after that. And you can't always have everything right away. You've got to work for it. In your 20s, you're not going to have $1 million house, or in your 30s or 40s for that matter, maybe not in your 50s either. But the whole drug thing does bother me because a lot of times when you hear about the crimes here in town and they show the photos on TV and they say, well, here's this guy. He's from Chicago. This guy's from St. Louis. This guy's from Minneapolis. They're not even Duluthians. I think I like to give us credit here. I don't think people who live in Duluth, we all work together, play together, make money together. I don't think we're stealing from each other. But the people from out of town, from St. Louis, Detroit, Chicago, Minneapolis, they come up here and they wreak havoc in our community because they don't care. They don't have roots here. They don't care. They don't have kids here. So a lot of this drug problem and crime problem is from people who are not even from the area. So they say, well, come on up here. Hey, come on up, from wherever you need housing. But these are people who have problems. These are people who commit crimes and steal from us. Most of the crimes in this town are not done by Duluthians. It's people who are not from here who don't care about the area. Just as an animal doesn't wreck his own home, Duluthians don't pick another Duluthians, for the most part. When you see those mug shots, always from hundreds of miles away, but they came here because they got free entitlements, free housing, and money for methadone. And that really grinds my rails.
Well, you're right up my alley on that one.
I'm preaching the choir here, aren't I?
Well, yes, mostly you are, but that's okay. I interviewed a woman who came from the range who had been counseling people off of drugs. She had done it herself when she was young, changed her life, got into counseling, came down here from the range, and took the job at that methadone clinic to straighten it out. She had the potential of a $75,000 a year job. When that company that owned it would not follow what she provided as a way to straighten it out, they just said, we're not doing that. We didn't offer you this job to straighten it up. We just wanted you to run it. And she said, see ya.
Really?
Yep. I interviewed her for 2.5 hours off camera. Then
How
she
disappointing.
Disgustingly disappointing. But, however, we also have a large heroin problem in this area. And since I don't live in the city of Duluth, I don't follow a lot of things, but it's amazing who I get in contact with and find out different things. The heroin is coming from the overuse of painkillers prescribed by doctors, who then these people end up on heroin, and then they use methadone to get off. Now, since we have people coming in from Chicago, and I've known about this since my children were young. We used to go down and work at the Damiano Center because as home-educated kids, I wanted them to give back to a community, and can't do much out in Normanna. There's
nobody there.
No, well, there is those of us that are country folk, but there was no facilities for them to be a part of.
Sure.
And so we were serving young bucks that were selling drugs on the street, and they were getting the free meals and complaining about them. And I confronted them one time.
The free meals that I pay for, those meals?
No, the Damiano, I'm not sure where the Damiano gets its money,
Okay.
but it probably does get government money. I just don't know for sure. But anyway, and then they were complaining about the slop. Well, I finally confronted them because I got tired of listening to it. But we were there giving our time like other people. And I knew about it then. Like I said, my oldest is 47. So this is how many years ago we've had drug dealers coming in from other parts of the country. It's nothing new. But what can you do with the Health and Human Services of the county to work with them to stop making this a free market for the people to come in here and live without any expectations? St. Louis County is one of the easiest in the United States to get on welfare. How are we going to, I mean, can you as a counselor being on the city council have any say in that at all?
Well, obviously with the whole city council, it takes everybody working together to try to move something forward. But it certainly would be an opportunity to look into why are these people why are they hooked on drugs? What is missing in their lives that they need to have drugs to get through their day? You know, they always talk about, okay, we need better jobs, high-paying jobs. Look, in retail, and I'm in auto sales, the first of every month, I'm at zero. We're all at zero. If I don't sell any cars, I don't eat, okay? I need to sell automobiles or whatever you're in. If you're in retail, you have to perform. Every day I shower, I shave, and I sell, the 3 S's, okay? And I find that if you're hungry enough and somebody's not just handing you entitlements, you will get out there and work. Now, if you're incapacitated, if you're handicapped in some way, I understand, I get that, okay? We need to help people who cannot help themselves. But honestly, if you're healthy enough to stand out there and peddle your drugs, you're probably good in sales. You know, you can probably sell cars too, for that matter.
Well, if we had 5 more minutes, I could help you with that one. But you know what? Karl, our time is up. This has gone so quickly. I'm so thankful you came in today.
Did you want a weather forecast too?
No, but I do want to say to the folks listening out there, please consider what you're doing when you go to vote in November. Karl is in the 1st District, and you need to think about what you want representing you on the City Council. Thanks for tuning in. Bye now.
Thanks, Marcia. Appreciate it.